The day she told me I was a typewriter at Microsoft, I handed her the monthly numbers she forgot to ask for. They were flawless, like always. My name's Martin Vexley. I'm 54 years old, and until 2 weeks ago, I was the senior operations lead at Eldridge Systems, a mid-sized enterprise software company with a fading reputation and too many departments running on legacy fumes. I'd been there 23 years, through 3 CEOs, 5 rebrands, 2 acquisitions, and a data breach that should have sunk us. But it didn't, because people like me held the damn thing together with duct tape, code, and prayer. When I started, there was no playbook, no structure. I was brought in to stabilize back-end operations, but that turned into building vendor contracts from scratch, running customer billing cycles, patching broken workflows, and onboarding every new hire who couldn't figure out our internal tools. Nobody ever trained me because there was no one to do it, so I trained myself. I wrote the manuals, I built the workflows. People called me Ops, like it was a nickname, not a job title. Then came Diane Collins. She swept in on a Tuesday morning with a new director title and the kind of smile that reminded you she used to win student government elections. Straight teeth, stiff posture, expensive shoes. She was the kind of person who used the phrase, "We're going to future-proof this department," and meant it like a threat. She didn't ask questions. She announced ideas. Half the team started prepping their resumes before lunch. I didn't. I'd seen directors come and go. They show up, change the font on a dashboard, then bounce once they realize the bones of this place are older than their entire careers. I figured Diane would last 6 months. Tops. Then she brought in her daughter. Just shadowing, Diane had said, breezy as hell, tapping the table with her manicured nails during our Monday sync. Chloe's finishing her business degree. I thought she could learn a lot from our operations workflows. She said our, but meant mine. Chloe showed up the next morning in heeled boots and lip gloss, carrying an iPad she barely looked at. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. She was polite, asked if the coffee machine had oat milk. I figured she'd get bored in a week. On Wednesday, Diane called an emergency team meeting. That's when it happened. No lead-up, no agenda, no HR loop-in. "I'm restructuring the team," she said, standing at the front of the conference room like a woman unveiling a new product line. "Martin will be shifting into special projects moving forward. Chloe will be assisting with operations continuity in the meantime." Continuity. No warning, no handoff, no documents. I looked around the table. Blank faces. A few eyes shot down to laptops. Everyone heard it, but no one moved. I didn't say a word. I just nodded and took my coffee with me. My office, my nameplate, my files, the whiteboard with 3 years of refined metrics, was hers by the end of the day. My desk was relocated to a supply closet with a folding chair and no window. That Friday, Diane passed me in the hallway and dropped the line like it was a compliment. "You're a typewriter at Microsoft. You had a good run." She smiled when she said it. That perfect, polished smile of someone who believed they'd just said something profound. I wanted to laugh. I didn't. I held out the monthly performance binder she forgot to request and walked away. By end of that week, Chloe had managed to forget to bill 3 major clients, missed 2 vendor reconciliations, and apparently didn't believe in email on Fridays. Her words, not mine. The department was already unraveling, but I let it happen. Not because I was powerless, because I was patient. They didn't notice I still had access, not just to systems, to people, to history, to truth. The day they moved me to the supply closet, they forgot to revoke my credentials. Maybe they assumed I'd go quietly, update my LinkedIn profile, and drift into early retirement like a faded Post-it note on a corkboard no one reads anymore. But I wasn't built for quietly. I was built for systems. And I built theirs. 12 years ago, they didn't have a proper billing framework, just spreadsheets and crossed fingers. I wrote the architecture myself, line by line, on weekends and holidays, because the budget didn't allow for third-party solutions. The system became so stable, so predictable, that it faded into the background. People thought invoices just happened, like magic. Chloe didn't even know what the platform was called. She sat in my old office now, sipping oat milk lattes and scheduling alignment sessions for problems she didn't understand. The first week, she didn't log into the billing dashboard once. I checked the audit logs. She had access. Diane made sure of that, but no footprints. Just digital silence. I stopped by finance on Wednesday. As a courtesy, I said. Pauline, the head of accounts receivable, raised an eyebrow when she saw me. Didn't think we'd see you around here anymore. Just making sure everything's running smooth, I said with a smile. Chloe's settling in, okay? She hesitated. She hasn't sent this week's invoices, said she's still learning the flow. I played dumb. That right? We're 6 days behind. We've got clients emailing, wondering where the statements are. That was all I needed. I didn't report her. I didn't send a warning. I just walked back to my little exile with the printer humming in the corner and the water stain on the ceiling. And I opened the system. There it was. A queue of unpaid invoices stacking like dominoes, dates sliding deeper into red. I cross-referenced the activity log. No attempts, no exports, no reports. Chloe hadn't touched it. She didn't forget. She didn't know it existed. Meanwhile, Diane strutted through morning stand-ups like a motivational speaker with a broken compass. We're moving into a more agile phase, she'd say, leaning into disruption. The staff nodded, but their eyes always flicked to me. Everyone knew who really made the machine run. I kept my routine. I brought Diane her coffee at 9 just like I used to. French roast, no sugar. She thanked me with a distracted smile, then asked me to find someone to draft a vision deck for Chloe. I said I'd look into it. In meetings, I took notes. I watched. I waited. The whispers started by the end of week 2. Procurement hadn't been approved. Vendors weren't paid. Projects sat idle. Chloe smiled through it, talking about redefining deliverables, but her confidence thinned with every missed deadline. The interns avoided her now. Even the IT guy, a 27-year-old Twitch streamer named Grant, stopped answering her pings. And still, Diane pretended nothing was wrong. It was late Thursday when I found it. A single line item buried in the outgoing queue, marked as processed but never sent. It was an enterprise client, one of our largest. Monthly retainer, back-end hosting, data compliance. Value, $187 million gone. Not delayed, not pending, erased. No logs, no recipient, no confirmation email. Like it never existed. I leaned back in the chair, the overhead bulb buzzing faintly above me. That invoice should have gone out Monday. It was the kind of error that tanks revenue reports and triggers board-level calls. Chloe wouldn't even know where to look for it. I stared at the blank space where the invoice should have been. Then I smiled. Diane called me a typewriter, but what she forgot is that typewriters leave an impression. Every letter pressed into the page with force. You might forget how it works, but it remembers you. Friday morning, Diane called a meeting. Friday afternoon, legal called me. The first one was full of smiles and croissants. Diane stood at the front of the conference room, hands clasped like a TED Talk was about to begin. She said she wanted to reconnect the team, even though half of them had already tuned her out the moment she used the phrase, operational rebranding. Chloe sat beside her, typing nothing on her tablet. I sat near the end of the table, where the coffee cart used to be, before they optimized our budget. My notepad was open, pen in hand. I'd been quiet all week, smiling, observing, the way you do when you're waiting for a fire to finish spreading before pointing out the matches. Diane opened with a PowerPoint slide titled, Vision in Transition, said she was proud of Chloe's progress, that the department was undergoing a temporary learning curve due to legacy infrastructure. A few people exchanged glances, a couple faked notes. When she said, "We're shifting away from dependency on singular expertise," I nearly laughed. It was a clean way of saying, "We pushed out the only person who knew how this place runs." After the meeting, she pulled me aside in the hallway. Voice syrupy. "How are you feeling about your new role, Martin?" I smiled. "Like I've got a front row seat." She tilted her head. "To what?" I let the silence hang for just long enough. "Growth," I said. By noon, I was back in my corner, sipping lukewarm coffee when Pauline from finance messaged me. She didn't use words, just sent a screenshot. It was the client account I'd flagged last week, the $187 million invoice. Deleted, not pending, not voided, deleted. No audit trail, no approval log. Gone. According to Pauline, Chloe had noticed the invoice in the system and assumed it was a duplicate. She didn't check with anyone, didn't follow protocol, just deleted it, manually. The client called to ask why they hadn't received their statement. That's how it came to light. By 2:00, legal reached out. Not a formal summons, but the kind of polite email that reads like a subpoena in a sweater vest. "We'd like to discuss recent changes in departmental process related to financial documentation." I responded promptly. "Of course. Always happy to support clarity." Then HR called. "Hey, Martin." The voice on the other end said, too chipper. "Can we talk real quick about your participation in team dynamics?" I knew the tone. It was the kind they used when they wanted to lay the groundwork for a narrative. I was cordial. Walked into the HR office with a neutral smile and thanked them for their time. They mentioned something about tone in meetings. How a few people had noticed I'd been withdrawn, and whether I was struggling with the transition. I listened. Then I opened my folder. Inside were printed logs, email timestamps, access histories, screenshots of every week since Chloe took my seat. Every document touched had my name on it. Every report, every export, every processed file, mine. Chloe's login, 0. Not a single access, not even a login confirmation. I laid them out like playing cards. HR's smile faded fast. "Martin," the rep said, voice smaller now, "have you shared this with anyone?" "Not yet." She glanced down at the sheet with the deleted invoice ID. The numbers spoke louder than I ever could. I leaned back in my chair. Calm, measured. "You demoted the one person who knew where the switches were," I said, "and left a child to fly the plane." She blinked. Outside, the office was quiet. Chloe wasn't in. Fridays were her mental reset days. I walked back to my closet of a workspace and closed the folder. The building didn't know it yet, but the collapse had already started. They asked if I wanted to file a complaint. I said no. I wanted to file a funeral. The audit team arrived on Monday. 3 of them, business casual, clipboards and laptops. The kind of people who don't smile unless it's in the margins of a spreadsheet. I recognized one of them from a quarterly review years ago. Back then, he'd shaken my hand and said, "You run a tight ship." This time, he didn't say anything at all. Just nodded as he walked past my closet office. Diane was suddenly everywhere. Her heels echoed through the halls, louder than usual, as if volume could substitute for competence. She popped into team huddles she'd ignored for weeks, clapping backs, asking forced questions like, "What's exciting you today?" Chloe trailed behind her, quieter now. No lattes, no tablets. Just a nervous smile and wide eyes that flicked from screen to screen like she was waiting for someone to tell her how to breathe. The staff noticed. It was subtle at first. Conversation stopped when Diane entered a room. Whispered jokes picked up when she left. By midweek, I caught 2 managers in the break room replaying her department-wide email on speaker, reading it aloud in a mock, inspirational tone that made one of them snort coffee. But this wasn't just office gossip anymore. Vendors were calling. Deliverables were late, payments were missing, onboarding timelines shattered. One client, a government contract we'd held for over a decade, threatened to escalate if they didn't receive confirmation of funds by Friday. The company that once bragged about operational stability was now sweating through its own pitch deck. I watched it all unfold. Quiet, patient. Diane knew something was slipping. She started framing Chloe's inexperience as strategic vulnerability during calls with executives, saying things like, "This is an opportunity for long-term growth." I knew the language. I'd heard it used to buy time before layoffs, but this time, no one seemed convinced. When the CFO called me up to the 17th floor, I didn't bring a complaint. I brought a USB. The boardroom was glass-walled, sterile, too cold. 3 executives sat at the table, including the CFO, eyes heavy with suspicion but tired of guessing. Diane was already there, standing like a defendant waiting to redirect the charges. Chloe sat beside her, pale, silent, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "We need a breakdown," the CFO said, voice flat. "The missing invoices, the backlog, the client disruptions. What happened?" I pulled the USB from my pocket, set it on the table without a word. Inside was a compiled report, system access logs, audit trails, missing invoice IDs, financial gaps tied directly to dates and logins. I'd color-coded the shift, 23 years of perfect processing in green, followed by 10 days of chaos in red. It looked like a hemorrhage. Diane leaned forward. "This is misleading. Martin has access to those logs. For all we know, he—" Chloe cut her off. "I didn't ask to be put here." The room fell into silence. Diane turned slowly, like she hadn't heard right. "I didn't want this," Chloe said. Again, her voice cracked. "You told me it would be easy." Diane straightened her back, face tightening. "She's being manipulated. He's been sabotaging us from the beginning." I didn't flinch, didn't blink. "The system was never built to hide lies," I said. "It was built to expose them." The CFO looked at me, then at the drive. "Give us the room," he said. I stood. As I passed Diane, she tried to speak again, but the words caught in her throat. She turned away. Outside, the glass wall was suddenly more transparent than ever, and inside, the walls were finally starting to close. Monday at 9 a.m., I was asked to return to my old office. Monday at 9:12, Diane was escorted out. It didn't happen with shouting, no slamming doors, no lawyers flanking her sides. It was quiet, almost surgical. A woman in a navy suit from HR and a man in security blues approached her desk without a word. Diane looked up from her keyboard, confused, maybe pretending to be. She glanced toward the glass boardroom as if expecting someone to intervene. No one did. I watched from the hallway as she was handed a small cardboard box. Her eyes landed on mine for just a second. Then they moved on, like I was furniture. It was the first time I'd ever seen her speechless. The executive floor felt like a morgue. Phones didn't ring. No one moved unless they had to. Everyone seemed to speak in whispers, unsure if the walls were still listening. Chloe's desk was already cleared when I passed it. No goodbye, no note. HR spun it as an unfortunate fit when pressed. Everyone knew the truth, but the company never writes down what it's afraid to say out loud. They offered me my title back before the end of the day. A generous raise. Full reinstatement. Stability, the VP of Operations called it. "We need to restore confidence," he said, like it was some commodity they could reissue like company laptops. I listened politely, took the folder from his desk, read the offer. I didn't say yes. Instead, I stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the lot. Same one I'd parked in for 2 decades. The painted lines had faded since the early years, just like the mission statements, just like the promises. When I turned around, I dropped the folder on his desk. "This place doesn't deserve another 23 years, I said, "but I'll train my replacement. You get one shot. Choose right." He blinked, caught off guard. "Martin, I think you're overreacting. You have the respect of the board, of the staff. We'd like to rebuild this." "I already rebuilt it. You broke it again." I left before he could finish whatever speech he'd practiced in the mirror. As I made my way through the rows of desks and conference rooms, people looked up from their monitors. No words, just nods. A few smiles, not the friendly kind, the respectful kind, the kind that says we saw what you did. Near the elevator, someone whispered behind. Me. I didn't catch the voice, just the words. You're not a typewriter, you're the blueprint. That one stuck. By 5, I had a cardboard box of my own, but mine wasn't filled with regrets or half-used desk calendars. Mine had a framed photo of my daughter's graduation, 2 black notebooks filled with years of handwritten documentation, and a fountain pen my wife gave me on my 10th work anniversary. The only things that ever really mattered. I took the stairs down, each step lighter than the one before. In the lobby, I passed Diane again. She was arguing with a receptionist about her badge deactivation. Red in the face, voice tight. Her box of things sat on the floor beside her, half open, papers spilling at the corners. She saw me. This time, I didn't look away. She called me obsolete. But today, she forgot her badge. Security walked her out like a guest. Betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers through HR policy and LinkedIn announcements. Sometimes it hides behind words like restructuring and culture fit. But when the lies collapse, they collapse fast. And they never take the foundation with them. They just peel back the drywall to show who really held the walls up. I didn't stay for applause. I didn't need it. The truth was louder than any round of it. And now I build something better, somewhere else, from scratch, where loyalty still means something.